Hello and welcome back for another episode of Wrenches, Gadgets, and Hacks. I've been remiss. I've been very dutifully introducing, wow, that's a mouthful, my co-host John, and I will do that in a second, but I forgot a whole season to say who I am. My name's Carl Storms, and I'll be your guide for this series of wonderful things that we talk about on Wrenches, Gadgets, and Hacks. But we all know you're not here to talk about me. You're here to talk about my partner in crime, the one that we've been working with all season long, and that is, of course, the pepperoni to my Hawaiian pizza, the raspberry Pi to my Arduino, and the Mickey Mouse to my Bugs Bunny, John Pearson. Welcome back
How's
to
it
the
going? I didn't even realize you didn't introduce yourself each time. That's hilarious. Everyone knows you use a bamboo lab, though, so that's good.
That's the important part, right?
Yeah, it's like, I don't know, it reminds me of there's this video game that I play called Animal Crossing, and like when you meet someone when you play online, it tells you, an old version of the game, it would tell you what fruit is their hometown fruit, because you have to like trade fruits to sell them and all this stuff. And it's like, that's the information you need. Like, what kind of fruit does their hometown have? That way you can sell it and make some money on the game. So,
Very nice.
yep. Don't know their name, but I know that they had apples, right?
That would definitely be my hometown fruit as well, I think, for a lot of people. A lot of apples in the hometown.
Yep. How's it going?
It's going good. It's going good. We've had a good run here. We've been talking a lot about the vibe coding. We talked about what is vibe coding. We talked about the good. We talked about the bad. Last episode, we brought it all together to talk about the reality, and this is really, some good, some bad. We gave some, what I thought were some very helpful tips and tricks about all of that, which if you haven't listened, shame on you. Go have a listen or a watch. We're right here on YouTube as well. But to end the series and the season, we thought it would be kind of cool to talk about the original vibe coding event. And for those of you that haven't done one, we're talking about hackathons. And
Hackathons.
they are very cool. I think they've sort of changed over the past few years, not just because of vibe coding, but because of how they've been run. John and I have both done one recently, and so we thought it was a great topic to sort of talk about and spin all of that vibe coding greatness into something that a lot of people that are listening, all 7 of you, about hackathons and how cool they are. So I guess to start, I'll ask you, John, if you were to define a hackathon, how would you do that?
Yeah, so I mean, I just think it's an event where you just go and hang out and do cool stuff in code. Depending on what that looks like for you, it just depends. But yeah, you just hang out. Ideally with people that you're having fun with, and you can write code and do fun things. I think the technical ones where programmers gather to make something for the final outcome of a project, but as long as you're having fun, that's always like my main criteria, and that you're writing code or doing something code related.
I would agree, but I would ask, do you have to be a coder to attend one?
No, absolutely not. So one that we participated on a few years ago, we had people on our team that weren't coders, because hackathons, the end goal is always to show some project, and people with presentation skills are very much needed. People with ideas are very much needed who might not know how to code. So if you come and you can at least bring industry expertise with you, that is so valuable. That might be more valuable than programmers sometimes at hackathons, because we're so laser focused on something we want to make. It's nice for someone to come in and say, well, actually, we'll do it this way, or something like that. And I have a little story about that here in a bit. But yeah, I think hackathons are great for anyone. Coders, people use the products, and people who are just interested in exploring and meeting people as well. It's a good networking event for sure.
Absolutely, and I think that's a great sort of recap and a great shout out to the wonderful hackathon team of Hack and Black, which was our name. Myself, John, Marcelo, Jason, and Adam all came together in a WeWork space in Seattle, I think it was. That was a built event, was it not?
Yeah.
Back
it was a built
in the good old
event,
days.
and it was like the Sunday before the event or something. It was like the one day before, and it was a straight 24-hour one, right? I think.
Yep.
It was fun.
It was good. And you learn a lot. You do a lot of things. For those that aren't coders, as John said, you always have people in places where you have this project, whatever it might be that you're putting together, and you want to have that outcome. So you have people that know what the end case is, so what we want to get to and how we want to get there, and then everyone kind of puts together. And I think what comes from that, as John alluded to, there's a lot of different versions of hackathons, but they kind of, the way they got started, at least the way that I sort of think about how they got started, was the idea that everyone would sort of get put together in a room. You always hear a lot about gyms or gymnasiums in colleges or universities or workspaces, and people would get locked in. And for those of you who don't worry, I'm doing air quotes. It'd be here's a bunch of food and sugary drinks, and you have 24 hours, 48 hours, 30 hours, whatever it might be, and everyone's going to work together to get the end product. And in the early days, and I don't know what the early days were, but it was more about having an outcome. So you would do the things like the Raspberry Pi or the Arduino, or you'd sort of be hacking not only code, but also sort of hardware. I have a lot of friends that do and I can't remember the name, but very similar things where they do the robotic leagues with the Lego. I can't remember the Lego robotic league name right now. I'll put it in the comments. But where they're programming the code, but also they're building these little Lego robots to do a challenge, and then that grows up to what you see almost onto where they do the robot fighting on TV nowadays. But it's a part of a physical aspect as well as the coding aspect. And I think
for sure.
I think they'll still exist, but a lot of it's coding now, right? It's much more focused on SaaS, and the one that I did recently was a company based one, and we were working the company gave us time to work on ideas for how we can improve the product.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, so you talking about Raspberry Pis and Arduinos and all that made me think of our hackathon back in 2019. You brought a bunch of that stuff with you because we didn't know what we were working on. We pre-assembled our team, so that's like another point to make, because you can pre-assemble a team a lot of the times for hackathons, or you can just join a team once you're at the hackathon. The main rule is you do all the development at the hackathon that you're working on. And our team was pre-assembled, but we still came in not knowing fully what we were going to work on. And you mentioned, like, should I bring some Raspberry Pis and this stuff to hack around with? And I was all, sure, bring it. And we didn't use any of it. So you had this luggage with you the whole time with a bunch of that stuff in it. And you're like, you made me bring a luggage full of stuff that was going to get flagged at the airport. And I'm just kidding. So I felt bad, but... yeah, I think we landed on our project at the time, which was like some asset manager for Dynamo in conjunction with the whole team. So Adam Thomas, he came in and he's like, this is a problem. Managing Dynamo graphs is something people come in wanting to do all the time. So he came in with that idea too and contributed. And then he did a lot of the slides and stuff, which was great because he's not necessarily a coder. I think he does some, but... same thing, I think Jason came in with a lot of industry expertise as well about managing Dynamo graphs, and he had like a whole hard drive of Dynamo graphs for us to use, which was super useful for our project. So definitely want to echo that anyone could participate for sure.
Well, and I think with that in mind, I think a lot of the people like I know Adam is with what he does with Reed Thomas, he spent so much time working with add-ins and not Raspberry Pi, PyRevit and things like that on the back end, that now there's a lot more of that he does. And, all of that started from a hackathon. And that's kind of how we bring this sort of full circle back around to talking about, vibe coding, is that hackathons were these places where people came together with or without coding expertise to spend some time kind of laser focused on a particular problem. And of course, the goal at the end is to have an outcome and a presentation and a working product, but rarely does it happen in that order. Maybe you have the presentation about the product, maybe the product's there, but it's not quite there. It's that term that everyone in the coding industry loves to hate, the MVP, the minimal viable product. It works, it ain't pretty. If you blow on the cartridge like your old console video game, it might work, it might not, but we get the idea of what's going through. And that was kind of the fun of working with hackathons. Every time since that first one, I always thought, how can I get involved more with that? Because it's not only the camaraderie, but you learn things. The learning comes from all of the things you do wrong. So much goes wrong because there's such that time pressure, in a good way, but you don't have time to worry about it. So it's like that, where that fail fast mentality comes from.
And I always like at hackathons actually making something that like works mostly, because like there's also like something to be said about being at a hackathon and just presenting ideas and what it could look like and this. But I always really like making something that you can actually live demo. I like live demos a lot. I know a lot of people are afraid of them. I'm afraid of them too, but I like them as well. And that's been one thing I like with hackathons. Like you, I just came back from a hackathon, an in-person one for AEC Tech is the conference in New York. And they just had their hackathon and I was there over the weekend as well. And it was, I haven't been to one in person since the 2019 one. That's a lie. I haven't participated in one since the 2019 one. I've attended two more in the last year. So one in DevCon in Europe and then one at a Dynamo hackathon as well. So I attended those as someone to help people as a judge. I was a judge at both of those. And it's interesting because even since the one in June, I think is the one I went to at DevCon, vibe coding's really taken off. So this one that I just went to was interesting because you have to pitch your project ideas. And there was at least, 5 or 6 people who pitched a project idea and they said, I don't know how to code. This is an idea I have, but I can vibe code. Like they were very comfortable just saying, I'm not a coder or programmer, but I know how to vibe code and I'll help out all I can, but here's my idea. I think one of them won one of the top 3 prizes actually, and it was pitched by someone like that. There was actually a lawyer at the hackathon who wanted to pitch something that like helps you do risk analysis on contracts. And he's like, I'm not a coder, I'm not even an AEC person. I just saw that this was a event happening and I'm here. And it was like, whoa, that's so cool. So I think the vibe coding thing is giving people like a certain amount of confidence that's really neat as well. So I thought that was interesting because back in our hackathon in 2019, I don't recall anyone there blatantly being like, I don't know how to code, you know.
Yeah.
I could vibe code. That wasn't like a term back then either. So
Yeah, and I think that is a big, plus to the idea behind vibe coding, especially at the stage that something at a hackathon might be, where it's the idea. And when we go to all these conferences and industry events, and it's all the same people, and we're all drinking from the same Kool-Aid, and we all say we need to do this or that or the other thing, and we all agree because we all understand it. But that's a very small subset of the people outside of our bubble. And
yeah.
like the lawyer that you mentioned, when we get those people from outside the bubble coming in and looking at a problem with fresh eyes and say something complete, we're like, no. But then it's like, well,
Yeah.
actually, we never thought of it that way. It's a whole different idea, and maybe it does work. And if these ideas and MVPs and sort of vibe coded throw together things get people thinking, and then a real team that does, I don't want to say real code, but vetted and QA, QC, and take it through all the processes, get into that. They may have never gone down that path if somebody didn't come in and say, "Hey, this looks like cool. Can I play?"
Yeah. It's super interesting. Yeah. And another thing I noticed at this hackathon was like for presentations, people list their whole team in there. So this person did this person did this. And then I saw people's presentations, they had like a person avatar, but it said Claude or a cursor or something or a windsurf. So they were actually like considering the vibe coding platforms as like part of their team, which I thought was like so like hilarious and cool. But people even acknowledge it. Like it's like no one's afraid to admit that they're using these tools, which is really cool. So I mean, if you've been listening to this series and you are like, I'm kind of embarrassed or don't want to try this stuff, I don't know why you would be. Don't be. It's all out there. It's a resource in our toolbox to use. And at this hackathon, it was used a lot. I wish they had more metrics on it of like how many people actually opened up like a cursor or a Claude or something. But I know our team, I had cursor open, someone else had cursor, and then another one was using Gemini for processing, like they were recording our meetings, like kind of, and they're processing it to get like objectives and summarize stuff for the slides. So even vibe coding stuff was contributing to our slide deck, which was pretty cool.
Yeah, it was the same way with the one that we did, and again, it was an internal one. The difference was it was remote, so there was offices where they had a lot of the devs. They would be together, but then people from all over the company, like myself, could remote in and work with teams. And
Yeah.
that was the question that I asked of our lead developer: can vibe coders that have no business being there be part of it? Yeah, absolutely. And we found when they were doing the presentations that a couple things happened. They had the most products or presentations ever delivered compared to other years because it was much
Wow.
more inclusive. And there was a lot of people like product owners. They're not necessarily developers, but they're sort of that gap between the industry and the software, and they have to play both sides of the fence. And now they can take that ideas and things they have and just simply use these tools that come up with an idea to show a proof of concept. And now it's much easier than storyboarding or t-shirt sizing or whatever the lingo of the day is for how long it's going to take to make this idea something real.
Yeah,
That stage can happen much quicker, which leaves more time for the actual building, of
for
whatever that
sure.
product is.
Yeah, I mean, and then like presentations getting built on the fly, like everyone's presentations looked great, right? And it's like that part used to take so long. Like we'd have a team member that's all they did. I mean, I think that's all Adam did for ours. Like not all he did, but what he was focused on was getting that presentation done, and like he made a logo for the tool and everything. And now it's like everyone kind of contributes in some way, which is pretty cool. So
Well,
yeah.
speaking of Adam and DAM, which was the name of the tool, Dynamo Asset Management, he did an amazing job on that. But another thing that this brings in, which goes back to the idea of vibe coding and what we talked about, is a lot of times when you're at these hackathons, the idea is that these become sort of open source projects at the end of time. At the end of the projects, they get put up there
Yeah.
as long as they're external and not internal, but they can be used and shared. And I remember when they used to do the one you were at, the AEC Tech, over the years, a lot of times Dynamo packages would come out of that, and we would kind of see it in the community.
Oh
It would come
yeah.
out. Conrad had done a few different ones that came out, and sometimes just that first version or two is kind of it, but sometimes the community will take it and it will grow from there and sort of carry on, and sometimes it gets morphed into the product or whatever the case might be. But if people hadn't been having fun coming up with some weird animal name for a Dynamo package, maybe it never would have happened. And all of that comes to the idea of these hackathons. And now that we've got this idea of vibe coding, and they become much more inclusive and less scary for those of us that have never been to one, and you're like, well, I'm not a coder, I shouldn't be there. We see that that's not the case, and all ideas are welcome. And the more sort of outside of the typical box your idea is, maybe the better. Not
Yeah.
always, but maybe.
Yeah, it's true. It's an interesting thing for sure. I was looking at our slides for our old one as well. Even logos were generated with AI now. Like our logos we made ourselves, which I just think is kind of funny.
It was
So we made
very,
like the Hack and Black logo. I'm just reminiscing over here. Yeah.
the reminiscing, and that was a lot of fun. The other thing that I remember is that a lot of hackathons have a theme. And I'm
Yeah.
very much of the belief that the theme is great, but do what you want. As
Yeah.
Hack and Black was, we didn't necessarily follow the theme.
Nope.
We did have theme music, though. If you're familiar with Hack and Black, we did walk up to the stage to Back in Black with alternate lyrics for Hack and Black. So we put all the effort into it, just maybe not following the theme. And
Yeah.
for the one I recently did, I also didn't follow the theme, and I didn't do a presentation. So bad boy all around. But I did
Yeah.
do live demo. I had a product where I could live demo. So I think that
That's
counts for
awesome.
something.
Well, I think too, like themes are nice, but I tend to like think of them more just as a guideline if you'd like to follow it, like as optional. This hackathon that I was just in didn't have a theme. I think it's always pretty open ended, but generally ones at AU or things like that have themes. Specifically, the one at AU this last year is a Dynamo hackathon, so using Dynamo or doing something in Dynamo or a Dynamo connected to Forma or something. Ours, it was generative design, I think, was the theme. And we made ours was an asset manager, and it was to manage Dynamo graphs. So, like, not at all generative design. We had some, like, machine learning kind of style stuff in there, which was cool, though, because it would take graphs and figure out what they did, which I thought was really neat. I still think it's a cool tool that we built. It's on GitHub. We'll include it in the notes as well. But yeah, that's one thing I encourage people to is to not stress about a theme so much. Or if that prevents you from signing up, don't let it. Just go make something you want, because our team actually won most fun at that hackathon, right?
Yeah.
I think there was like prize 1 and 2 or something for the top 2 hacks that stuck to the theme, and then there was like an honorable mention of most fun, I think. And that's what we won because we had a blast. We had a lot of fun just hanging out. It was all of us hanging out. Like, we didn't stay for 24 hours straight, but we were in there from like early morning to evening before we all kind of took off. and it was just really fun. Thinking about like the vibe coding stuff too, like we had an internal hackathon at work too in July, and that was the first time that I had used Cursor like quite a bit myself, and that's because someone else external to our direct team did some work in Cursor and shared it. And I was like, oh, okay, let me see what I can do with that. That landed on something you can look for it on the Dynamo forum called Dynamo MCP server. But I experimented with it in Cursor, and it like blew my mind what it was able to achieve just writing it. And me knowing Dynamo, I was explaining like normally in Dynamo we do this. Help me write some code that does that, and it just did it. So that was the first time I was exposed to Cursor was through a hackathon actually, which was pretty cool. I had it installed, but I didn't use it because I wasn't sure what to do with it yet. But yep, pretty crazy.
With that, the one thing that I've noticed too, working on DynaFetch, is that AI is becoming much more versed in Dynamo, or Dynamo BIM, as I like to call it when I ask it questions.
Yeah,
Whereas back in the day, like pre vibe coding, when you had to go to places like Stack Overflow and ask questions, you could get bullied pretty quickly if you weren't asking questions about whatever the cool software of the day was, Linux or PHP
yeah,
or God, I'm old, whatever software that was that they were talking about back then. But now, because everyone's having these things and having these interactions, and we've taken away the idea that you have to be working on websites to talk about JavaScript, you have to be working on this. There's more knowledge about what it is out there,
yeah.
and it's crazy how it knows the answer. And I'm like, I can't believe it knew that, and it does.
That's very true. And you mentioning Stack Overflow, like I don't do as much like programming myself. Like I used to do a lot of Revit plugin programming, so I'd be on Stack Overflow all the time. I haven't actually looked at Stack Overflow in a while. Now that you mention it, like because I tend to just ask like a Chat GPT or something right away. Like if I'm like, how do you do this? I just ask it and let it do the searching. That way I don't have to navigate through Stack Overflow and people replying use the search function, which is a very interesting thing that I hadn't occurred to me till just now that I haven't really landed on Stack Overflow in a while.
Maybe that should be the next hack idea, to create an add-in or a prompt module for ChatGPT or Claude or whatever, that will, instead of responding with always, that's a great idea, thanks for sharing that, it responds with a snarky, did you try the search?
Did you try
Did you try
searching
turning off and on?
first?
Yeah, that's right. The Stack
Read the
Overflow
sticky.
interface. Yes.
Read the sticky is like one of my favorite ones. I'm like, you jerks. Yeah,
I'm
like
going to downvote this.
yeah, like I mean, it's the same way on any forum, not just software. Like as we've talked about, like I like old Volkswagens and work on them. There's a forum out there that if you don't go search first and you ask a question that's been answered, they're gonna like make you feel so bad about it. And I'm always like, man, like, don't you want to be welcoming? What if this is like someone's first time getting introduced to this like community of people, and the first thing they hear is use the search, you idiot. Like, oh man, that's always bugged me. And if you tell someone use the search, say it politely, like, hey, here's that topic, it's been discussed before, thanks for coming. I don't know, like that's always been weird to me. And now AI is overly polite, so there's no middle ground that we found yet, I guess.
Yep. You need to be somewhere in the middle. And even when you
Yeah,
tell it to not be polite, it is. Eh?
yeah. I'm starting to get really angry with one of mine. It's because I'm asking it to change some overlay. And I'm like, make it do an overlay that does this. And it's like, okay, I did it. And I'm like, you didn't do it yet. So I'm like, I've been going back and forth like 2 days with it right now, trying to get it to work. And I think I'm just going to have to abandon that feature that I wanted because I can't figure it out.
It's hard, and I find with that, and I've gone down that same path as well. And we talked about this a little bit in the last time, is that sometimes you have to know when to call a chat or a session and try something completely different. Whether it's, there's probably a way to fix that, but maybe you have to try in a different AI or ask the
Yeah.
question differently. But sometimes I find when I have my hardest times, like when things aren't answered the way that I want them to be, and I may not know how they should be answered. That could be part of the problem, guaranteed user error. But if you start that new chat, that new session with a completely different question base or prompt, I guess as we should say, that's your best chance to get it, because it has a clear mind. It thinks a certain way. But I have also gotten down rabbit holes where Claude or Gemini or whatever you might be using, it's like they woke up on the wrong side of the bed. They're whatever the algorithm they used for that session was just wrong. Like, I'm like, you're usually so good. This is like you haven't had your coffee this morning. And I know they
Yeah.
don't care about that sort of thing, but sometimes they're just off.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, and then what you just said too about throwing it in another one, that's probably my next step. So we talked about it before, like we logged on, is there's always like a new platform coming out like every other day, it seems like. And the one from Google I just heard about, I'm actually gonna later on today I'll throw my questions at it and see how it implements this feature that I'm really wanting. So
Yeah. Yeah. There's been a lot
we'll
of
see.
recent updates, like the new what's it, Gemini 3 and then ChatGPT 5.1 that have just come out recently. We're dating ourselves, obviously, because stuff changes so quickly. But they're all sort of each time they come out, they kind of one up each other for what they can do. And it's like anything else, getting that fresh set of eyes, whether they're real or AI, on a
Yeah.
problem, just like bringing that outside person in, it can make a big difference. And sometimes it's really tough to say, I've worked so hard on this question, this chat, this session. I don't want to give it up, but you'll thank yourself later when you do.
Yeah, that's true. That's where I'm at right now with this. We'll see how it goes. I'm trying to add it to where my little note taking app, if I have notes about a person and it's marked as a person, it overlays the person's name on the note preview until you click it, and then it shows all the notes you have about that person, like a Rolodex, I guess. Really date yourself there.
Hey, Rolodexes are going to be cool again. There's one of the techfluencer, influence, whatever you want to call it, out there, young, and they've created the idea of a physical phone. That's how young they are. And so you Bluetooth your cell phone to this physical phone, and so
Ah,
when you're in your library, for example, you don't have your device with you, and when somebody calls you, you can answer the phone and have a conversation with them.
oh,
Again, which blows my mind because I was around when that was the only way you could do it. So it
yep,
seems, but everything that's old is new again.
yeah,
And so the idea of a Rolodex and that tactile version of how that worked, and to be able to integrate that into your app idea, I think is something that people will get behind that weren't there for the first time, because that's new.
yeah,
We've when you've had is digital, going back to the tactile and even just a version of how it used to look, I think
yeah,
is going to be a big hit. It's very popular now. Everything comes back around, but just a little story from us old folks to you young folks, that what
yeah.
all that is new used to be old.
One thing like that I'm stubbornly holding on to, like kind of thinking about that, is like for Nintendo Switch, the game system. I still buy physical cartridges as much as I can. I don't like to. I have a few that are like the downloadable titles on there, but like I like to own the thing. I like to have the card. Like that's where I come from. I had a Super Nintendo and a Nintendo 64 with stacks of plastic cartridges. So like that's something I still hold on to quite a bit. And like with my whole note taking thing, like part of the points I want to have AI be able to ask things of my notes, like what was that movie I wanted to watch, all that kind of stuff. But I almost wonder if I just need to get a dang notebook and write stuff down. So like that's kind of one thing that I've been thinking is like, do I need to just go physical with this stuff and stop stressing about it being digital?
Yeah, well, it comes back to wanting, now that we have all this technology where we can search and review, the whole idea of
Yep.
a note is that, I don't remember it. And so writing it down physically, it's the act of writing it down that's supposed to lock it into your brain, but that doesn't work for me all the time.
Yeah.
So being able to go back and search it, and I even think that's why there's hardware now where they're trying harder and harder with all these iterations to get these devices where you write on it, it feels like paper when you're doing it right. But the idea is that
Yeah.
then, because it is in a digital form of some format, they can instantly turn it to text or put it into something that could be searched, and that's
For
that's going to
sure.
be the holy grail down the road.
That makes me think maybe I need to adapt my notes application to just scan pages of a notebook and then add that to my LLM for me to ask questions on. And it runs OCR or something. Now I'm just thinking of projects out loud while we're on this call, but
That's the best way to do it.
I could
Just
try it now
yeah.
though.
I know that I saw what would it used to be called? Oh, I can't remember the name now. It used to be an online form, and then Autodesk bought it, and then they got rid of it. Ideas something. It was like a little yellow robot. It was like,
Instructables.
thank you, yes,
It's still
and
around, right?
it is. It is. Autodesk isn't part of it anymore. I don't believe they are. But yeah, it's super cool. And the idea back then was when you were doing like a maker or hacker or whatever, you would put together a workflow to how I made, my home security system or whatever it might want to be. And you could go there and you could figure out how to do this thing and follow along. So the idea, I saw one that allows you to put up a system with a couple of simple cameras and an Arduino that would keep track of your darts. So when you played darts, it would have two cameras that would triangulate and tell you, oh, that was an 80, that was a 30 or whatever, and it would add up the score for you. So if you could do that, you could set up something like that and have like a board where you write your notes and it would do the same thing. It would be able to capture that and put it in place.
Yeah.
So have a physical whiteboard, but with the little cameras on the four corners so it can capture the information and make it digital.
Yeah, I should just make this board take notes in. I have like a whiteboard next to me. It's the black mirror glass one, but I should almost just use that. And as I take a note, it throws it on my LLM or something. That'd be a fun project to work on for sure.
Yes. But remember to make it simple text instead of an image because that'll eat up all your tokens. Go back to that.
Oh gosh, tell me about it. That cost me $5 when I gave when I gave it a screenshot saying fix this. It's like sure, and then didn't fix it. And it cost me $5. I was like, well, that sucks. Extract the text first with like an open source OCR library or something.
Yeah, I found that a similar hack that I ran into with, I think it was ChatGPT, but again, it could be any of them. But I would have a Word doc or a PDF or something that had rich text. Is that what they call it? And I would copy and paste, and because it was rich text, it would paste it as an image. And I'm like, no, don't do that. So then I learned that if you right click, you can just put paste as simple text. Way cheaper.
Yep, for sure.
Yeah. Wow. And just like everything, it always comes back to money.
That's the thing I'm always having to watch now. When I have my card on file, I'm like, oh man.
Yeah. So, and they haven't come up with a way to do with your card the same thing they do with your email, where you can put in a spoof email for what you want, so that when it serves its purpose, it doesn't come back.
That exists
for your money.
Yeah, privacy not sponsored. Privacy.com. Huh. It creates mass credit card numbers that you can like tell it bill a maximum of $10. And then you can stop it and pause it and things like that too. I think it only connects to a debit account, not a credit account, though. So,
well, that's even better if you can use your own money like credit. Then it's a win-win.
Yeah, so I've used it before. It's pretty cool. I've used it for free trials, to where it's like they need a card, but I don't want to forget. So yeah, privacy.com, and then I have a Capital One card, and Capital One does masked credit card numbers too. So handy. It's like so cool. But yeah, kind of not a vibe coding tip, but I mean, maybe if you're doing a lot of stuff with trials.
Yep. Or you accidentally put the information in the AI and you forgot to remove that. You want to make sure you have that.
If it's a masked credit card number, you'll be good to go at least.
Right. Well, that is wonderful, and I think we're at that spot where we're bringing the bird, the plane, the one person mobility device that's actually a helicopter that's a drone. I saw a thing about that. They're going to launch them in Vegas, but they were mobility
like a limb
devices.
chopper.
Yeah, so that you don't have to get a license. Anyways, whatever this flying thing is, we're bringing it in. And before we wrap up the series on vibe coding and series 4 in general, any final thoughts, John?
I mean, really great series. I had a lot of fun. It encouraged me to try things as well with this little note-taking app that I've been working on. I'll try to include some screenshots or something for you to put in the post or something of it. But yeah, it was also another tool in my tool belt when I went to a hackathon. So it helped me out a lot at the hackathon vibe coding. So being able to do things quickly. It might be something I know how to write code for as well, I found. But sometimes it's easier just to ask like Cursor to scaffold the solution for me, which was really nice. So I hope everyone liked this series. I know I had liked participating, so give it a try if you haven't yet by now. But yeah.
I think that's great advice. I know John said it earlier on in the series, but if you are doing any vibe coding and you have any projects or anything you want to do, hit the comments wherever you're seeing this on the website or on the blog or on the YouTubes. I also want to shout out to scaffolding the idea. I think that's a brilliant term, especially for us being in the AECO industry. So I like the idea. We're not going to do a roadmap. We're going to scaffold the idea.
I don't even know where I got that term, but I've said that for a while, like scaffold the solution, scaffold the method. But yeah, it ties in. So
It
good.
does. It's perfect. And that's the great way to bring this bad boy in, and we will. So thank you for joining us for another episode of Wrenches, Gadgets, and Hacks, where we explore the tools, technologies, and time-saving hacks like vibe codings or hackathons that are shaping the future. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, again, somewhere down here, and stay tuned for more insights into the exciting world of AECO and technology. Until next time and next series, keep building, innovating, and exploring the possibilities.